Welcome. We're going to learn about HTML and CSS in these tutorials, but first I would like to take you through how web applications work. In this lesson, we're going to learn the components of a web application, how static web pages are processed, how dynamic pages are processed, and a survey of the web browsers. Components of a web application consist of the clients and a web server. As you can see in the diagram, the client is the computer, but that can also be anything such as your tablet or your mobile phone. And the web server holds the files that make up the web application. As you can see, it goes from the client to the internet to the web server. When the client and the web server come together to communicate, that's known as a network. And the network allows the two to communicate with each other. We're all familiar with the internet, which is one large web network made up of smaller networks. And networks are categorized by size. First, you have a LAN, which is your local area network. It's a small network of computers that are near each other and can communicate over short distances. That includes computers in the same building, and that's an intranet. These are mostly in your business offices where they have certain applications that they just use for employees only. Then you have a wide area network, and that's made up of multiple LANs that are connected over long distance, and they use routers. And the router will determine which network is the closest to the destination and send information over to that network. Your internet service provider is a company that owns a wide area network that is connected to the internet. That would be your AT&T, Comcast, your Suddenlink, and they're organizations that provide services for accessing, using, or participating in the internet. And they have the ISP connects the WANs at large routers known as Internet Exchange Points, the IXPs. And this is how we're all able to connect and communicate over the internet. This just gives you an example of your basic architecture of the internet. You have your LAN, which connects to the WAN, which goes to your IXP. And your IXP sends a message back to the WAN and into the LAN. How static web pages are processed. Your static web pages are just your basic web pages that you go to that can only be changed by a web developer. You can't shop on them. They're just there for your information purposes only. And they're sent directly from the web server to the web browser when the web browser connects it. It begins when you type in the address to a browser such as Internet Explorer or Google Chrome. They'll enter an address on the web page in the address bar. The browser will then build a request for the web page to the web server, which is known as a HTTP. This will let the server know which file to retrieve. The file retrieved contains HTML. That's your hypertext markup language, which we're going to learn later in this lesson on how to code. The server will then send the file back to the browser as part of the response. The browser will then translate the HTML file into a web page where the user can then view the content. Next, you have your dynamic web pages. They basically do the same thing as your static web pages, except this one will go from your web browser to your server, and then the server is going to go to an application server, which will retrieve a program or script that loads the form data that the user submitted and executes the script and generates the HTML for the web page. And if necessary, it will have to go to a database server to request your data. After the script or program is finished, the application server sends the dynamic HTML back to the web server, and then the HTTP response is sent back to the browser. And then the user will then be able to view the web page. That's known as a round trip. We'll not be learning dynamic HTML in these tutorials, but the static ones will give you a good start. Some examples of dynamic web pages that you may have visited are Amazon.com and eBay.com. Next, we're going to survey web browsers that you're probably familiar with. If you've gotten on the internet, you've more than likely used one of the following. Internet Explorer, owned by Microsoft and runs on Windows. Firefox, Mozilla owns them, and they run on all major operating systems. Same with Chrome. They're owned by Google. And then Safari has Apple, which runs on Macintosh and Windows. And then we have Opera, which It's not as widespread as the other ones, and they run on all major operating systems. Now, when we develop our websites, it's generally good practice to test it on all 5 web browsers, and this will assure that it reaches everyone. And next, you'll have a multiple choice quiz.